Gender quotas for female politicians. Can the Liberals really be considering this? Let's have a look. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Heiser Says. Today it's been about 40 degrees in some parts of Queensland, so it's just insane. So forgive me if I have the fan on in the background, but it's staying on. I thought I'd look at the issue of gender quotas, because the Conservative Party we have in Australia, the Liberals, the closest thing we have of the main two parties, is now looking at implementing gender quotas because of the absolute annihilation they experienced in the Victorian state election. Now, if you're not familiar, Victoria is the southernmost mainland state of Australia, and it is essentially our version of California without the sunshine. It's bloody cold. You get good coffee and good food. Lots of Greeks down there and Italians. So it's good multicultural food, but there's also a lot of issues. There's a lot of crime going on there. If you look at my freedom map, you can see a lot of the gang crime that's happened, and that's still happening, still being reported in the news. I'm surprised the Liberal candidate didn't push more on the crime issue, but oh well. That's not really what I'd like to discuss. I'll look at that in another video. I want to look at this idea of gender quotas that the Liberals are pushing for. This would, personally, the fact that Labor in Victoria, of all places, believes still in the wage gap and this type of rubbish would be enough for me to not even consider them as being politically competent to run a service station, let alone a state. But they got a lot of votes. They got 53 seats. So quotas for women in the Liberal Party are squarely on the agenda for the first time after a disastrous election result that could see as few as 9 women representing the entire party in the 128-seat Victorian Parliament. Okay, because apparently your gender has something to do with how you can represent people, I guess. The push for affirmative action, I hate that. The push for discrimination comes as the Sunday Age can also reveal that both female membership of the Liberal Party and the proportion of women members has declined over the past decade. Well, is that, that's probably just because everyone's had enough of the rubbish we're copping from these parties. Or maybe people are saving money, so they're getting rid of luxury spending. Days after Matthew Guy's opposition suffered a humiliating defeat against the Andrews government, former premiers, Liberal MPs and senior officials from across the factions conceded that quotas may be the only way to tackle the party's long-standing women's problem. Does it have a women's problem? Oh, good. Even arch conservatives who contributed to the state branch moving further to the right say the party's parliamentary lineup does not reflect the wider community. Should it? No, it should be merit-based. It's politics, so it's not really merit-based. It's going to be who has the best connections and has read Machiavellian. At a state assembly meeting on Friday night, moments after party president Michael Kroger resigned, Conservative power broker Marcus Bastian pushed for quotas to be considered. He also suggested introducing US-style primaries to choose future candidates, along with fixed terms in which state MPs in safe seats would get a maximum of 8 years to make the front bench, or step aside for fresh blood to be pre-selected. Honestly, those aren't too bad ideas. I like the maximum term for safe seats. The primaries, it's going to be a dog and pony show, but at least there'll be some competition in the public sphere. I don't like the idea of quotas, but I don't mind these ideas. Liberal Administrative Committee member Paul Mitchell, a right faction warrior aligned with Mr. Bastian and Mr. Kroger, agreed serious reform was needed. The Liberal Party's politicians are too male, too white, and too tired. Why the hell is this coming out of the Liberal Party? And here, for international views, Liberal Party is meant to be our equivalent of the Republican Party. It's a more conservative, right-leaning, slightly right-center party. I mean, the two parties are so similar. you're splitting hairs, but then again, Labor's going more and more toward chasing after the Greens, that they're going a bit funny. In case no one realizes, females account for 50% of the population. Yes, but as we'll look at later in this video, they are much less interested in politics than men. Much less interested. And I've found some interesting things there to look at. With limited female representation, how can you expect female voters to identify with the brand liberal? This needs urgent addressing. Well, women can appreciate male leaders too. You know, and conservative women, married women in relationships, they'll often vote for male leaders in conservative parties because they want more of their husband's wealth to be returned to him. You know, reduced taxes. This is the problem. This is if the Liberal Party are just concerned with chasing votes rather than having standing on principle. And not that I'm surprised at all. You know, everyone's had enough of the big two, and that's why the minors are here in Australia are getting so many votes. But the big problem I think we have here as well is that a lot of people don't understand preferential voting. They won't vote for a minor party and then put another major as number two just to get a few minors up to to voice their contempt with the big two. They'll just vote with the big two, going, oh, I don't want to waste my vote. That's why we need voluntary voting. Anyway, back to the article. By the time votes are counted, it is estimated that less than a third of Liberals' depleted party room will be women. Who cares? In contrast, Labor looks set to have 35 female MPs, representing 48% of Daniel Andrews' team, with half of the Premier's new cabinet made up of women. Well, that's unfair. You know? Well, one member of his cabinet is very inexperienced and is being put in charge of a public transport portfolio. I mean, we've all seen Yes Minister, and if you haven't, it's a British comedy. You know the civil servants run it all anyway. While most Liberals have resisted affirmative action, no, discrimination, for years, arguing that it undermines merit, yes, it does. Many warn that without dramatic action, a widening gender gap could continue to alienate voters and fuel the perception the party does not represent the broader community. I'd like to see some research for this one here, because more women voted for Trump than didn't, or more white women voted for Trump than Hillary. Senior State MP Mary Wooldridge told the Sunday Age, targets have been set and ignored, so now it appears that some sort of quota is likely to be the only way that we can ensure that more good Liberal women are elected into our parliaments. No. Well, what are you doing to bring up the next generation of Liberal women? Are you supporting them? Are you mentoring them yourself rather than having quotas in place? Are you implementing, going to schools? And maybe she is. Maybe she is, and it's all falling flat. But maybe people don't realize these things take time. And sometimes people won't even give a damn about the gender if they've had enough of the party. I think a lot of it was also that the Liberals have just chopped and changed Prime Minister as badly as Labor has. So a lot of people just they're full of them. Former Premier Ted Billay, sorry I can't say that, said he also supported the idea of quotas, but noted it would require much more to reconnect with Victorian voters, a process of renewal that he believes could take the party up to 8 years. So Victoria's looking at another 8 years of Labor, unless Labor really buggers up. I'm amazed Andrew did so well, considering that the red shirts debacle, they paid to not get infrastructure built, the crime issues that are happening in Melbourne. I'm surprised. All the gender quotas and rubbish they're putting in, and they're adamant the wage gap exists. I think I'm so far removed now from what the mainstream populace considers appropriate that the Overton window is like going over here and I'm over here, and I consider myself reasonably centre-right. I think it's time for us to do something similar, she said. Ms. Fuller said the Liberals were inclined to cling to arguments about merit. She had been asked at pre-selection forums about who would cook meals at home if she was to become an MP. Oh, come on. Ugh. Why did she say that? That just sounds stupid. We're so far behind our I mean, look at her. She's past the age of when she should be cooking for a kid. She's older now, which is also the age when most women get into politics. We're so far behind our female MPs with the loss of some great women MPs and candidates. It's time for us to have a similar model to Labour and get more women into Parliament. I think you should resign from the Liberal Party and go to Labour if you want to base your party's, if you want to bring identitarian or identity politics into your party for selecting candidates. The Liberals have also come under increasing criticism for their treatment of women, particularly after the defection of federal Victorian MP Julia Banks this week following her claim of bullying during August's leadership coup. I honestly would expect people in this position to be much more resilient than they are. I think she's just using this for her own political gain. Because now, as a crossbencher, she's got much more power, much more influence. Guaranteed. Put my money on that. You can't get to that level and not have experienced bullying or idiots dealing with it and having a tough skin. I can't believe that. I think that's utter BS. That these women are using this for their own political purposes. They have to be. Equally troubling for the party is that female membership has fallen from where it was a decade ago. Well, you're just flailing about. Figures obtained by the Sydney the Sunday Age show that the Liberal Party's 12,000 plus membership across Victoria, around 57% are male, and in Metro Melbourne it's closer to 60%. Yeah, of course, because Metro Melbourne has a bunch of greenies, and you're going to get more women leaning towards these socialist things, particularly when they're younger. It'll be higher in the suburbs because you've got more families and people living in suburbia. That's how life works, guys. You live in the city, then you move out. Yet a Liberal Party review in 2008 recorded male membership statewide at 52% and female at, yeah, well, that's 5% difference. That's not that big a deal, guys. As opposition leader Matthew Guy sought to address the gender imbalance at Parliament by setting an ambitious target to boast female representation by 10% points at every election. Well, you failed by that, mate. Your party's been decimated. I don't. Let me know in the comments. If you're a woman watching this, would this make any difference to who you vote for? Would it make any difference if they're guaranteed, if you've got 50-50 women representing you, will you even care? He also outlined plans for new growth, Women to Win, headed by former Liberal, and it doesn't matter, you lost. They were undermined not long after he announced them when 4 Liberal pre-selections were held in quick succession for the safe seats of Brighton, Sandringham, Niven and Evelyn, all at Evelyn resulted in men being pre-selected. So 3 men, 1 woman. That's not too bad. Probably because the men are more experienced and they've done their time in the party. Just give it time, it'll change. But these safe seats are all falling anyway. At the election, the party fell short on gender yet again. So far, only 3 of Liberals' lower house seats, Evelyn, Eldon and Southwest Coast, are held by women, along with 4 in the upper house. So, they're just going on about pre-selection and not enough women. So I'm not going to continue reading with this article. What I thought we'd look at is gender quotas around the world. We'll have a look at this website here. This is from the, where is it? Can you see that? There we go. It's from the Institute of Democracy and Electoral Assistance. So they have this little map here, and we can have a look at, there we go. We can look at the different quotas. So you've got no quotas, no data. Okay, so we look at Russia, 13.6% women, and they've got no quotas. We'll look at Australia here. We have 28.7% women in Parliament, but we have political party quotas. So I'll put a link to this in the description. You can have a look. Let's look at China. It's at 24.7%, and they've got reserved seats. They've got reserved seats, so seats that are reserved just for women. They've got 25%. But then we'll look to his neighbour here. Kazakhstan has more women in Parliament, and they've got no quotas. So is it working, reserved seats? We'll look next to here at Mongolia, and they've got legislative candidate quotas. What are they? 17%. So Mongolia is better than Russia. But these are Asiatic cultures, so let's are they actually making a difference? Let's look at Germany. They've got legislated candidate quotas. No, sorry, Poland. Germany, 30.7%, and they've got political party quotas. They're doing better than Poland that has legislated candidate quotas. What about France? 39.5%. Wow. So it's interesting to see what all these countries have. Switzerland, 33% pretty much, political party quotas. Denmark, there you go, nearly 40% women, and they've got nothing. They don't need it. Sweden, 46%. And they've got political party quotas. Norway, 40%. But let's look at Finland. 42%. I wonder if it has more to do with culture than to do with putting these quotas in place, implementing them. Because it looks like similar cultures are having similar outcomes. Well, let's look at America, 20%. Okay, and they've got nothing. Australia, 28%. The UK, 32%. Oh, Iceland, 40%. So I'd suspect it has more to do with culture, because I found another interesting article that I'd like to share with you, which is that women know less about politics than men do worldwide, regardless of gender equality. Now, this is an older one from 2013, but I think it's interesting to read through it and have a look, because I guarantee you it hasn't changed. If you're a political nerd and you're interested in politics, have you ever gone to a party? Who are you talking to? Other blokes are interested? How many women are interested? I went to the Liberty Fest conference, and they had Liberty drinks beforehand. And there were 80 to 90% blokes and just a few women there. And one interesting thing, if you're a single guy, and you're interested in this type of politics and more right or liberty-based, freedom-based politics, go to those events, because you got beautiful conservative or smart women there. That shit all over the lefties, because conservative women are more attractive. But I'm married, so I don't need to worry about that anymore. Thank God. So regardless of gender equality, women are less likely to know about current affairs than men. The survey findings were consistent from Colombia to the UK. So just keep this in mind. Current affairs is something that you should be aware of if you are going to be involved in the political process. So do political leaders like Angela Merkel make politics more relevant to women? Well, we all know where her decisions have made in the last 5 years since this article was written. So women know less about politics regardless of gender equality, according to a survey by the Economic and Social Research Council. The report focused on 10 nations, both developed and developing, where men and women were asked questions about domestic and international news. Despite the diversity of the 10 sample countries, Australia, Canada, Colombia, Greece, Italy, Japan, Korea, Norway, and UK and US, women answered fewer questions correctly than men in every country. Wow. 10,000 participants took part in the study, which tested their knowledge of broadcast, print, and web journalism. They were asked a combination of questions based on hard and soft news reports, including recent international events. The hard news questions pertained to topics such as national unemployment, while soft news, I'm going to highlight that, while soft news related to sports personalities, celebrity scandals. Wow. Well, this is a bit dated now. You got Trump would be all over the news as a celebrity and a politician, but he's completely different. The level of gender equality in the nations surveyed was based on the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Index ratings. So Professor James Curran, director of the Goldsmith Leverhulme Media Research Centre at the University of London, was surprised, I bet he was, to find that gaps in political knowledge are wider in countries that have done the most to promote gender equality. Now, this is interesting because Jordan Peterson was discussing this with Joe Rogan in a recent event, one of his podcasts. I think it was the second one he did with him, where that the more legislated for equality a nation is, like the Scandinavian countries, the less women actually go into some of these fields. And Joe postulated, is it because it's mandated they don't have to do that "I'll show you" aspect, which it could be. These gender gaps in Norway, the UK, and the US are as large or larger than gaps in South Korea and Japan. Women's scores in the UK, the US, and Canada were more than 30% lower on average than men, whereas in Greece, Italy, and Korea, women's average scores were only 20% lower. The UK is positioned at 18 out of 135 in the WEF gender equality rankings, while Korea is placed at 108. So, yeah. Academic studies have previously found that women have high levels of risk aversion. Yes, well, we all know about the big five personality and the differences there, and so are afraid of being wrong. When faced with multiple choice questions, women are more likely to give a don't know response than men. Yep. Others argue that the questions used to gauge political knowledge tend not to be gender neutral, and that women's political knowledge is more connected with a personal experience of local politics and government programs related to a daily life. What? Yeah. So, okay, then they can only run for council. ESRC research has found that the frequency with which people watch the news on television plays a role in gender gaps. Apart from Colombia and the US, the more people watch TV news, the better informed they intend to be. However, watching, reading, and listening to the news tended to be a more male activity, particularly in Canada, Norway, US, UK, and US. Particularly if you look at YouTube as well. Age is also a factor. Now, this is interesting. Age is also a factor in women's interest in political affairs. Now, we were looking at our recent a liberal candidate who was complaining, asked who cooked the dinner. She wasn't that young anymore. Whereas Labour have put up like a 19-year-old uni student who still lives at home has won a seat. That just feels too young. It really feels too young to have enough worldly experience to make these decisions. Anyway, the study found that women acquired political knowledge much later in their lives than men, regardless of a country's gender equality status. This could be because women have less time to keep up with current affairs in their 30s and 40s, as they spend most of their leisure time looking after family and doing housework. Whatever, I'm not even going to get into that. Meanwhile, men in advanced democracies steadily acquire political knowledge as they grow older, because men are interested in it. Why do you think I'm doing these YouTube videos? Because I'm interested in the politics in my country and around the world. It seems that gaps in exposure to media are related to the gaps in knowledge between men and women. Professor Kaori Hayasha, co-researcher on the report, he found that the gender bias of hard news content in all countries played an important role in gender gaps and underlines the serious lack of visibility of women in TV and news coverage. Journalist Kathy Newman recently raised this issue in her blog, where she wrote that all broadsheet newspaper editors in the UK are male, while female journalists have to fight to get their voices heard in the newsroom. Well, yeah. So that's all a bit outdated. And let's have a look at the results of the study. You can see here the differences with what they knew. So Australia 53 to 40, Canada 48 to 33, Colombia 26 to 15. So there is definitely a difference in women's understanding of politics, current affairs, than men. Now, I know the study is from 2013. I would bet a carton that it hasn't changed, guaranteed. And the Liberal Party, to deal with their mammoth defeat in Victoria, are trying to implement this. So then you have more people coming up and sprouting rubbish in our parliament, like the Greens all the time. Half the time you see the Senate, it's just them talking about bullying, man-bashing, sexism, all this stuff. And yet we have a bushfire going all the way up in Queensland. The state's on fire now. And the people who are fighting the fire, a lot of them are farmers using bulldozers and equipment and things like this. And I want to look into it, if the recent clearing changes in Queensland to vegetation clearing has increase the risk of this happening. What do you think? So guys, let me know in the comments, please. Do you think we need gender quotas for women in our in Parliament? Do you think the fact that women know generally less about politics is affecting the quality of our politicians? Honestly, I don't think it is. I don't think we have a very high quality of politicians. So yeah, guys, thank you very much for joining me for this episode of Heise Says. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you all again next time. Bye for now.